something that will only make sense once the cost of invisibility is fully named and the purpose behind it is finally revealed. The pattern is not about ingratitude from families or husbands who do not care. This runs deeper than individual failure. This is about the architecture of invisibility that gets built into the very structure of serving others well. When someone becomes skilled at anticipating needs, people stop articulating them. When sacrifice becomes fluent, people forget the one sacrificing also has needs that require language. Nobody says this out loud in church lobbies or Bible study circles. A woman is not lonely because she is alone. She is lonely because she is unseen, surrounded by people who depend on her, who love her in their own way, who would be lost without her, yet living behind glass. They see shape and movement but cannot hear the voice trying to tell them she is disappearing. Consider the woman who cried in her car every day for 6 months. Nothing catastrophic had happened. Her marriage was intact, her children were healthy, her faith was present. She cried because she could not remember the last time someone asked her a question about herself that was not logistical. When did she become a schedule coordinator instead of a person? When did her interior life become so irrelevant that conversations only happened on the surface of tasks and timing? She described it like living in a house where everyone knows where the light switches are, but no one remembers who installed the electricity. They benefit from the light. They would notice immediately if it went out, but they do not think about the current running through the walls or the person who makes sure the system keeps functioning. This is the invisible labor of a godly wife and a Christian mother. It is emotional. It is spiritual. It is the kind of work that leaves no visible evidence of itself, because its job is to make everything else run smoothly. The breakfast appears on the table, but nobody saw the planning that happened 3 days ago when the grocery list was made. The clean clothes appear in drawers, but nobody witnessed the sorting, the stain treating, the folding at 11 at night when the house was finally quiet. The permission slip gets signed, but nobody knows it was found crumpled at the bottom of a backpack at 7 in the morning during the chaos of trying to get everyone out the door. This labor extends beyond the physical tasks into territory that cannot be measured or quantified. It is remembering that one child does not like their sandwich cut diagonally, while the other one does. It is knowing without being told that a husband had a difficult meeting because his shoulders are tight and his responses are clipped. It is sensing when a teenager is struggling even though they insist everything is fine. It is carrying the mental load of every birthday, every appointment, every school event, every deadline, every preference, every need before it becomes urgent. The world has started calling this the mental load, but that term does not capture the spiritual dimension of what is actually happening. This is intercession in the form of anticipation. This is spiritual warfare disguised as meal planning. This is prophetic discernment, showing up as knowing which child needs extra attention today, even though they have not said a word. This is the gift of helps operating at such a high level that it becomes invisible precisely because it is so effective. You regulate the emotional temperature of your home without anyone knowing you are doing it. You absorb tension so it does not spill onto your children. You carry anxiety about finances or health or extended family so your husband can focus on his work. You pray through problems before they even materialize, and when they do not happen, nobody realizes you are standing in the gap. This is faithfulness. This is obedience. This is also exhausting in a way that makes you feel guilty for even naming it. Good Christian women do not complain. This lesson came early, through sermons about contentment and Bible studies about submission and examples of Proverbs 31. Women who rise while it is still night, and whose lamps do not go out. Women who are worth far more than rubies, but who never seemed to need rest or help or someone to see them struggling. The teaching was clear. Strength looks like silence. Endurance looks like a smile. Faithfulness means showing up, even when showing up is costing parts of the self that cannot be afforded. So the voice that wants to say exhaustion is real gets swallowed. The feeling that rises when serving dinner while being the only one who has not sat down gets buried. The part that wonders if anyone would notice a pause, even for one moment of not being needed, gets silenced. This is not lack of faith or spiritual weakness. This is what happens when strength has been performed for so long that being seen has been forgotten. So now you are here. You have been faithful. You have kept your promises. You have loved your family well. And somewhere in the middle of doing everything right, you started to feel everything wrong. The gratitude you should feel gets tangled up with resentment you hate admitting exists. The faith you have always relied on suddenly feels like a script you are reciting rather than a reality you are experiencing. You are a woman of God, and you are also a woman who is running on empty, and those two truths are colliding inside you in ways that make you question whether you are allowed to acknowledge both at the same time. Something uncomfortable needs to be named. If God sees everything, why does he feel silent here? If he numbers hairs and catches tears and knows every sitting down and rising up, why does the invisibility persist? Why has he not intervened, convicted, changed the circumstances that keep this wheel spinning? Easy answers feel thin at midnight while cleaning up from a dinner no one thanked you for while everyone else sleeps. Those answers do not land when the same prayer has been prayed for months, and nothing has shifted except the capacity to keep praying it. Here is something harder, and possibly more true. Sometimes God allows invisibility not as punishment, but as preparation. Sometimes he lets someone live in the margins, not because he does not see them, but because he is protecting something in them that the spotlight would destroy. The biblical pattern suggests that those whom God is preparing for something significant often walk through seasons of being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed by those who should know better. But there is more to this pattern that needs to be understood. These seasons of hiddenness are not random. They are not accidental. They serve a specific purpose in the formation of character that cannot be developed any other way. When someone is visible, they learn to perform. When someone is hidden, they learn to be. When someone receives recognition, they learn what works for applause. When someone serves in secret, they learn what is true when no one is watching. The wilderness seasons in Scripture were never wasted time. They were intensive training grounds, where God stripped away everything that was false and fortified everything that was true. Moses spent 40 years in the desert before he could lead a nation out of slavery. Joseph spent years in prison before he could administrate a kingdom. David spent years running for his life before he could sit on a throne. The hiddenness was not punishment for past mistakes. It was preparation for future assignments that required a level of character that could only be forged in obscurity. What if the same principle applies here? What if this season of feeling invisible is not about being forgotten, but about being prepared? What if God is allowing the stripping away of external validation so that identity can be rooted in something deeper than performance? What if he is teaching faithfulness that does not need an audience, because it is sustained by an audience of one? Joseph interpreted dreams in prison for people who forgot him the moment they were released. David hid in caves while Saul sat on the throne already promised to someone else. Hannah wept in the temple, while her pain was misread as drunkenness by the very priest who should have had eyes to see her desperation. God was not absent in those stories. He was allowing pressure that would eventually produce something those individuals could not have become without the crushing. But resolution is not coming yet. The tension remains because perhaps someone is in the middle of their story right now, and the end has not been written, and what this season is forming remains unknown. Two categories of people exist in this world, divided not by geography or theology or economic status, but by what they pay attention to. There is the world, and there are those who see. The world rewards noise, celebrates visibility, measures worth by output and productivity, and measurable results. The world looks at a life and sees a good wife, a dedicated mother, a woman who has it together, then moves on because the world does not have time to look beneath surfaces. The world is not cruel. It simply operates from a value system that counts what can be counted and misses what matters most. Those who see recognize faithfulness in the form of someone showing up again after being overlooked yesterday. They notice sacrifice that costs something real, not the convenient kind that makes people feel good about themselves. They understand obedience that happens in the dark when no one is watching and no one will ever know except the person and God. Those who see do not need performance or proof or production. They simply recognize what is true. The world overlooks what heaven records. Every act of service thought to go unnoticed. Every prayer prayed through tears when too exhausted to form real words. Every moment gentleness was chosen when screaming felt justified. Every time want was laid down for someone else's need. Heaven recorded it. Not because God is keeping score, but because he does not miss a single movement of love in his daughters. Invisible and hidden are not the same thing. Invisible means erased, forgotten, irrelevant. Hidden means tucked away, protected, prepared for something that requires formation in secret before revelation in public. They feel the same when living through them. Both hurt when desperate to be known. But the distinction matters, because identity is not found in being seen by the world. Identity is found in being known by the one who sees everything. Before going further, something needs to happen. Not for the video, not for anyone else, but for the woman watching this. Place a hand on your heart right now. Feel it beating. That rhythm has not stopped since formation in the womb. It has kept going through every moment of invisibility, every season of exhaustion, every day when giving up felt like the only option. The heart is still beating. That means God is not finished writing the story. That means there is still breath in lungs for a reason. That means the same God who started this work is faithful to complete it. Pray this. God, soften what has hardened. Reach the places where walls have been built to protect from more disappointment. Understanding why this season feels so heavy, or why the invisibility cuts so deep is not required right now. Just stay. Do not leave. Do not walk away from you, or from family, or from calling. Just help us see what you see. Understanding can wait. Staying is what matters. What is actually being carried needs to be named. The emotional regulation of an entire home. When a husband comes home stressed from work, his tension gets absorbed to create space for him to decompress. When children fight or struggle or face disappointment, their feelings get held until they can process them. The role of household thermostat happens by default, constantly adjusting to keep everyone else comfortable. Nobody asked for this. It became the job because someone is good at it, and because someone has to do it, and because caring too much to let it fall apart is hardwired. The Bible never promises that faithful service will leave someone feeling full and energized at all times. In fact, it promises the opposite. It promises that following Christ means taking up a cross. It promises that dying to self is part of the journey. It promises that the grain of wheat must fall to the ground and die before it can produce fruit. But somewhere along the way, the church started treating depletion as a spiritual failure, instead of recognizing it as evidence of actual sacrifice. Real sacrifice costs something. If it does not cost anything, it is not sacrifice. It is convenience dressed up in religious language. When a woman reaches the point of depletion, it is not proof that she is doing something wrong. It is proof that she has been doing something real. She has been actually laying down her life. She has been actually pouring herself out. She has been actually carrying weight that has actual mass and actual consequences. The exhaustion is not the enemy. The exhaustion is the evidence. It proves that something true has been happening, something costly, something that matters in the kingdom even if it goes unnoticed in the home. God sees every ounce of strength that has been spent. He sees every moment of pushing through when quitting felt easier. He sees every prayer prayed on empty when there was nothing left to give except obedience. Now comes the center of everything, the revelation that makes sense of the ache. Invisibility happens because identity became functional instead of relational. Read that again slowly. Identity became functional instead of relational. What someone does replaced who someone is. Wife became a role instead of a relationship. Mother became a title instead of a connection. Woman of God became a checklist of behaviors instead of a living, breathing, complex human being in conversation with her Creator. Nobody did this on purpose. This is not a villain story. This is what happens gradually when survival mode becomes baseline. When just trying to make it through the day, operation shifts to function. Get the kids to school. Make the meals. Keep the house running. Show up to church. Read the Bible. Pray the prayers. Check the boxes. And slowly, imperceptibly, being a person stops, and being a machine that produces outcomes starts. God never intended marriage to erase visibility. He called it a union of two people, not the absorption of one person into another. He designed motherhood to be a pouring out of love, not an erasure of self. He created complex, multifaceted human beings with thoughts and feelings and dreams and desires, then called them to serve. But the serving was never supposed to delete the person doing the serving. Here is the prophetic word. He hid not to erase, but to protect what he is restoring. In this season of feeling most invisible, he has been doing surgery on the soul. He has been separating identity from function. He has been rebuilding the foundation of who someone is so that when serving happens again, and it will happen again, it will come from overflow instead of obligation. It will come from wholeness instead of drivenness. It will come from a woman who knows she is loved for who she is, not just valued for what she does. This is the long work. This is the work that cannot be rushed or skipped or shortcut. This is the work that happens in hiddenness, because it is too sacred and too fragile to happen under the scrutiny of others. God is not ignoring your pain. He is attending to it with the kind of care that requires you to be still long enough to let him work. Scripture seals this truth. A woman named Hagar ran away into the wilderness because she was used and discarded and invisible to everyone who should have protected her. She sat by a spring of water in the desert, completely alone, convinced no one saw her suffering or cared about her survival. God met her there. He saw her when no one else did. He called her by name when everyone else had reduced her to a function. She gave God a name that day. She called him El Roy, the God who sees me. Not the God who sees what is done. Not the God who sees usefulness or productivity or performance or ability to hold it all together. The God who sees the person, the woman beneath the weight, the soul that is tired and scared and desperate to be known. That same God is looking right now. He has not stopped seeing for a single second of the invisibility. He has not looked away during the hardest days or the loneliest nights or the most desperate prayers. He sees not as wife or mother or servant or saint. He sees as his daughter, as the one he formed with his own hands, as the one whose name he speaks with tenderness, even when the sound of her own voice has been forgotten. The God who sees is still the God who calls. He is calling back to the self, not away from family or responsibilities or calling, but back to the woman he made before shrinking happened to fit into everyone else's needs. He is calling into a version of faithfulness that includes rest, a version of service that includes receiving, a version of love that includes being loved, not just giving love. What happens now? How does forward movement happen when sitting in the middle of tension between what is and what could be? There is no three-step plan or simple solution or promise that everything changes tomorrow with the right prayer. Life is more complicated than that, and God is more patient than credit is given. What if this season is not about being noticed, but about being known? What if the invisibility being fought is actually the invitation being missed? What if the ask is to stop performing and start receiving? What if he is more interested in restoring the soul than maintaining the appearance of having it all together? Answers are not required right now. Figuring out how to fix everything or change everyone or suddenly become visible in all the ways of being overlooked is not the task. Just take the next breath. Just tell the truth about where the standing is. Just allow being seen by the one who has never stopped looking. He sees, not what is done, but who someone is. Not function, but face. Not productivity, but pain. And this truth stands with everything. This is not the end of the story. The finish line has not been crossed. The best parts have not been wasted on invisible labor. They have been invested in eternal work that fruit may not be seen until heaven, but matters more than anything the world calls significant. He sees. And this is not the end of the story.